Another James Harden season ends in disappointing fashion as the Philadelphia 76ers were roll bounced out of the semifinals of the Eastern Conference playoffs by the Miami Heat 99-90. We could talk about Doc Rivers. We could talk about Joel Embiid in other videos. I want to focus this bad boy, though, specifically on the most disappointing piece to this puzzle, which is the bearded one, James Harden. Look, James Harden has had a successful career, a successful life, right? He's around 33, 34. The man's made over $300 million. He's an incredible fashion guy with Adidas. I mean, this dude has made a lot of money. Like, James Harden has nothing to be mad about. Clearly, he loves the clubs. Clearly, he loves partying. He loves Lil Baby. He loves Meek Mill. James Harden is going to have a fantastic back end of his life that he should be happy about the hard work that he's put in. I'm not even talking about James Harden, the human being. Let's talk about James Harden's career, though, as the Sixers lose again. And James Harden specifically loses again early in the playoffs, even though Miami was the 1 seed. At the top of both of those rosters, the Heat were missing Kyle Lowry for most of that series. The Sixers had Joel Embiid for 4 games. They had Tyrese Maxey, who's emerging, and they had James Harden. Tobias Harris somewhere in there as well. They had James Harden in Philly, presumably healthy, and they get bounced in 6. They lost in Philadelphia again. They couldn't even force a decisive Game 7 to at least not lose in Philly again. I'm watching them fans walk off that court and walk out that arena in complete shambles. Heads down, spirits low. Some were crying, some putting bags over their heads. Like, trust the process. We've been trusting the process for 15 years. It was embarrassing for the Sixers to lose against the Miami Heat in Philadelphia. Specifically for James Harden to only score 11 points, but the most ridiculous piece to this puzzle, which has become a theme throughout James Harden's career in big games, is only 9 shots. Look, I don't care. One day, probably one day soon, by the way, somebody's going to produce a documentary on the life of James Harden. It'll probably be on a streaming platform, Apple TV, I don't know, ESPN Plus, let's say Netflix, Amazon Prime. I know I got some Hulu lovers in here. You like Hulu? I don't know what platform was going to get the rights to the James Harden story. And by the way, it's an incredible one. Anybody that's able to go from nothing to $300 million before the age of 35, that's a story worth telling. Excuse me. But at the end of the day, if you tell that story on any of those platforms and leave out this key element, to me, you're lying. Like, by not telling the full truth, you're lying. You got a kid, your kid go into the kitchen. Let's say you tell your kid, do not eat any cupcakes before dinner. Let's say your kid goes in the kitchen and eats a cookie. Did your kid disobey your specific words? No, but they knew what you meant by saying don't eat any cupcakes. You meant don't eat any sweets. But your kid tried to play the word game, the semantics game with you, and they went and ate a cookie instead of a cupcake. Okay, you're still going to probably be very upset at your kid. James Harden's story, if you do a documentary on the story and you leave out this tidbit, you are lying. If you do not bring up the fact that in big games throughout James Harden's career, he won't even take big shots. He won't even shoot the basketball. And this is a guy who was a ball hog in his prime. He don't even want to be on the basketball in big games. It for sure, it's got to be a big piece to the James Harden story. You cannot tell that story without incorporating that piece to it. James Harden has historically not liked big games as a number 1 or number 2 option. When he was in Oklahoma City early in his career, when the Thunder were able to get to the finals, you know what James Harden was? More times than not, he wasn't even starting. He was the 6th guy off the bench. He wasn't the first option. He wasn't the second option. And hell, when Serge Ibaka was out there, sometimes, not every night, he wasn't even the 3rd option for Oklahoma City. That team was able to get to the finals. You also want to know what's synonymous with that? James Harden wasn't nowhere near as famous as what he became the moment he got traded from Oklahoma City to Houston. He became a superstar. Not just financially in the league, he balled out on the court, but he became a superstar personality. We started to see him hang out with the Meek Mills of the world. It's manifested into the Lil Babies of the world and all that great stuff, which I'm happy for the brother. He's got friends. They seem to love each other, by the way. But on the court, with that popularity and with that more responsibility, James Harden in big games has shrank more and more. And last night in Philadelphia, it was just the latest example of a guy that doesn't want to take shots in big games. He wants no part of that culpability for missing shots in big games. Because you want to know why? When your season is on the line, fans are more invested. They probably paid more to get into the building. They're some of the most passionate fans ever. They're going to boo louder when your team doesn't perform well because they're invested. He don't want any part of being that lasting image for a team as their season ends. So what does he do? He just doesn't take shots. And I'm just looking at some of the guys Harden has had the luxury of playing with. Dwight Howard, though his prime was ending, I mean, he turned Dwight Howard into a backup center. Chris Paul, who is still killing it, by the way, in Phoenix, he turned Chris Paul into a spot-up shooter in Houston. Russell Westbrook, I'll give him a pass on Brody, but nothing's wrong with Joel Embiid. I got Embiid out there with a broken face, literally a broken face. He's out there fighting tooth and nail, and though Embiid didn't have a great Game 6, he still managed to get 20 and 12, and here's the most important piece. Joel Embiid took 24 shots, ladies and gentlemen. A center that doesn't dribble the ball up and down the court got 24 shots in Game 6, while James Harden got 9, took 9, less than half the shots that Joel Embiid took, a guy that led the league in scoring at one point in time, and James Harden has never been an efficient scorer. I bring that up to say he got 35 points per game on a lot of shots a game. This dude used to dribble, and shoot, and slowly we're watching him because in Philadelphia, after he got traded, pretty much all their games were big down the stretch. He became pass first, shoot second, or third. Okay, it's cool in the regular season, but as the postseason manifested, the Sixers needed him to be shoot first, pass second. They don't need a point guard. If that team was fine without James Harden, if that's the case, never forget this piece. Never forget this piece. It's reported that Joel Embiid was fine with James Harden because it was just something to get the bad Ben Simmons taste out of the mouth. It was reported, though, that Joel Embiid really wanted to play with Bradley Beal. That's the guy he wanted, not James Harden. And following this Game 6 disaster, there are a lot of questions in Philadelphia that now have to be answered. And this is a FERRO told you so video for a reason. I told y'all I thought the Brooklyn Nets won this trade when it happened. Now, Ben Simmons got to play, but assuming Ben Simmons plays, the fact that you were able to get Ben, Seth Curry, and Andre Drummond, 2 rotational pieces, I think without a shadow of a doubt, the Sixers lost this trade, and now they're stuck like Chuck in this James Harden dilemma. And I think it's a big dilemma. I think you got a big problem on your hands, Philadelphia. James Harden is cool, really tight with the VP of this Sixers team, Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey was the Houston general manager. When Daryl left Houston, at the time we thought he was going to retire for a year or two, he literally wrote, I'm not making this up, y'all, he wrote a letter thanking James Harden for allowing him to be his general manager. Go look it up. I'm not lying. It's real. James Harden and Daryl Morey are in love with each other. All right? One of the owners of the Sixers, Michael Rubin, is super tight with James Harden because he's super tight with all of James Harden's friends. Michael Rubin kicks it with Meek Mill, Lil Baby. As a matter of fact, they're business partners together. All of them. Okay, now what? You have an agent, James Harden, that if he wants to can opt out and get around $60 million a year next year if he wants to. He agreed when he got to Philadelphia to give them the one more year on this player option. We don't know what he's going to do now following this abysmal season in. We've seen James Harden kind of pull a 180 in the past, a la Brooklyn. This ain't really where I really wanted to be. What if he does it again? We shall see. But if he doesn't opt in and he opts out and says, yo, Philly, we had an agreement when I came here. Y'all got to extend me. How can you in good graces give that brother nearly $60 million a year after what you just saw? Nothing's going to change. He ain't going to get older and want to take big shots. If he ain't done it by now, it ain't going to happen. That's who he is. You got to pay Tyrese Maxey in the next couple years. He's going to get the bag. Joel Embiid is not the happiest. One day that brother's going to demand a trade out of Philadelphia. It might be this summer. It might not be. It's coming, though. You got some questions here. James Harden has the general manager and owner in his back pocket. But Joel Embiid is the franchise best player by a country mile right now. What do you do in Philadelphia? FERRO told you so. I told y'all this was going to happen. I told y'all this was a bad trade. I said they would never win together. Go look it up. It's in my videos. I said Philly would never win big with Joel and James being your 1 and 2. I do not believe in James Harden. And my belief in Embiid being the number 1 is dwindling by the day. I don't think that's real, by the way. This is a disaster in Philadelphia. That's a disaster that the Sixers got on their hands right now.